Feel free to be whoever you want to be.
All right, everybody, welcome to episode 2 of the Two Tone Talk podcast, where we talk about the Tennessee Titans primarily, but also everything else going on in the NFL, because that matters to the Titans too. And especially this week with the Titans playing on Thursday night, defeating the Green Bay Packers. Talked about that plenty in episode 1, which you can check out now. We got to sit back as Titans fans this weekend and watch everybody else duke it out. Always a stress-free Sunday in the fall and winter when the Titans have already taken care of business and you can just watch everybody else take care of some business of their own. Before we get into yesterday's games, I want to remind everybody that this podcast is anywhere that you listen to podcasts: Apple, Spotify, SoundCloud. Look up Two Tone Talk Podcast. Look for my picture. And then you can listen to this on those apps as you commute to work, as you go about your day. You can listen to the podcast there. Or if you want to watch it while you listen, of course, it's here on YouTube as well. So yesterday was week 11. Can you believe we're already at week 11 of the NFL season? And a lot happened yesterday. The early games especially felt like a lot of teams playing very poorly. There was a lot of sloppy football yesterday, but all that matters is that some teams that really needed it won, and some teams that really didn't need to lose lost. And I'll tell you, I'm going to start with the Sunday Nighter, because if you want to talk about a team that needed to win but didn't, it's the LA Chargers. I think that their season so far has been a massive disappointment. Massive disappointment. You have to look at the expectation for them. I don't know if people necessarily thought they would win their division because the Chiefs are in it, but I think plenty of people probably had the Chargers as an easy AFC wildcard playoff team. I think that people clearly would have thought Justin Herbert, Keenan Allen, Austin Eckler, Mike Williams, more than enough talent to be a wildcard team. Now, granted, we have had some surprise teams come up. I think the Jets, we'll talk about them in a second, they've been better than people would have ever thought they would be. The Patriots probably better than people. I know they're probably better than I would have imagined they would be. So now the Chargers find themselves on the outside looking in at 5-5. 7 teams get in the AFC, and I think they're like at number 9 right now. So they're going to have some help, and they're going to have to, they really can't afford to lose many more games at all. And that's a surprise to me, because even up until this week, it was like, oh, the Chargers will probably be, at least from my perspective, it's like Chargers will probably be a wild card playoff team. They'll probably be a 6 seed or something like that. Like, it was a no-brainer. But now they're really on the outside looking in, and they're going to need some help. And yet again, it feels like every time they play the Chiefs, it goes this way. They're right there. They're about to win, and then it just slips away from them at the end. And that's exactly what happened last night. And I know it's the Chiefs, and I know it's Patrick Mahomes, but especially with the Chargers, it's like, God, they almost beat them every time, but they come up just short. As a matter of fact, when the Chargers scored late in that game to go ahead, I was watching it live, and I was like, well, I think it was like a minute 40 when the Chargers scored. I was like, final score is going to be 30-27, because Mahomes is going to take them right down there. And that's exactly what he did. And I know that it seems like too much of a given, but I think Patrick Mahomes got to be your leading candidate for the MVP of the league right now. I mean, this team lost Tyreek Hill, and people thought their offense would take a step back. Last night, they were without Juju Smith-Schuster. They were without Mecole Hardman. And Kadarius Toney did nothing. Everybody thought Kadarius Toney was going to have a huge game for them last night. He really didn't do anything. But still, Mahomes does what he does, and he still had Travis Kelce, and that's really all he needed. And the Chiefs get the 30-27 win. The Chiefs are now 8-2. They sit at the number 1 seed in the AFC for now. And the Chargers as I said, are on the outside looking in. And I don't know. I mean, of course, some of these teams that are ahead of them, people have a hard time believing in a couple of them. So maybe the Chargers, things can work out for them. But really surprising to me that they would be 5-5 at this point in the season and really fighting for a playoff spot, because the Chargers, they've lost a couple of games. If you go back and look at their games so far, they've lost some games that I think most people would have thought they should have won. And if they would have won them, they would be in a much better position even with the loss last night. But the Chiefs beat the Chargers on Sunday Night Football. Should the Chiefs be viewed as the favorite in the AFC right now? Knowing who they are and the fact that they've been doing this for years now, and they've been in the AFC Championship game like 4 years in a row, absolutely, you look at their reputation over the last 4 or 5 years and you say, okay, they should be. I don't know if it's... I'm sorry about it. I'm trying to get over this sinus infection, everybody. I don't know if it's so cut and dry, though, because you have teams like the Dolphins there who I really feel strongly about the Dolphins. I think the Bills are going to be just fine. They're going to be around. I think the Ravens could give the Chiefs trouble. And, of course, I think the Titans could give the Chiefs trouble because the Titans gave the Chiefs trouble at Arrowhead with Malik Willis, a quarterback, and no receptions by any wide receivers. So I don't think it's so cut and dry that the Chiefs are just the clear favorite in the AFC. And because in years past, the Chiefs have been untouchable. Nobody's going to beat them, and you know it. This year doesn't feel... I mean, they look human, and yeah, they're going to be tough to beat, and maybe they are the team to beat in the AFC, if for no other reason, because of what they've done the last 4 or 5 years. But I think it could be very interesting with these teams in the AFC that could really give the Chiefs trouble in January. But the Chiefs get the win last night, 8-2. Hopping over to the early window of games, I felt like a prophet yesterday, because if you watched or if you listened to episode 1, I picked a lot of these games spot on. I think I only got 1 or 2 games wrong yesterday. Here's one of the ones I got correct. The Falcons over the Bears. Listen, I was worried about these Falcons because it looked like they were on life support. I think they were down by 10 in the first half. And then Cordero Patterson. Can we talk about the career renaissance that Cordero Patterson has had with the Atlanta Falcons? Everyone had him pegged as just oh, he's a kick returner. But he has been the most pivotal member of this Falcons team since he joined the roster. It's insane. But he did return the kick and turn the whole game around. They were down by 10. They looked lifeless, and then Patterson returned the kickoff. And back and forth game, and I got to say, everybody always talks about Justin Fields and how good he is and the things he does. Yes, he's a phenomenal athlete. There's a ton of potential there. But we have to acknowledge that late in games, the Bears continue to have a chance to go down and win, and they continue to not do it. We also have to talk about the fact that the Bears are apparently trying to get Justin Fields killed out there because he's clearly hurt at the end of the game, and they've still got him running the ball and doing all of this stuff. The Falcons get the field goal late by Younghoe Koo. And, hey, look at Atlanta. They're 5-6. They have a losing record. But, as I said last week, they are in the worst division in football. And so they're only a half game behind the Bucs, who had a bye this week. So they were able to pick up a game on the Bucs. And the Falcons have life. Listen, they have life somehow at 5-6. Well, we know how. They're in a terrible division. But the Falcons are an interesting team. You never know what they're going to get, what you're going to get from them. And as I said last week, they have a much better roster than what they've had over the last few years. I still have major questions about Marcus Mariota. Some of you Titans fans know exactly what I'm talking about with Marcus Mariota. Still wonder what the deal is with Desmond Ridder, if they would even consider getting him involved at all. But the Falcons get a much-needed win to stay alive in the NFC South. And the Falcons have life. The Bears, they've seen enough from Justin Fields this year to know they need to build around him in the offseason, and he can be something special for you going forward. The Bills-Browns game, this one was interesting. They had to move it to Detroit, obviously, because of the snow. The Bills win 31-23. The Bills came into this game on a 2-game losing streak, and it was looking a little rough for them early. I mean, Jacoby Brissett and these Browns, I mean, they were playing really well, but the Bills finally put it together. And the Bills, I think that what could happen in the AFC that I would sure hate to see happen, the Bills about a month ago, they were the front runner. They were the team that everybody was like, they're going to win the Super Bowl. Because now the Dolphins have started doing what they're doing, it's like the Bills have kind of taken a back seat. Here in the AFC, we cannot afford to put the Bills on the back burner and forget about them. I don't care if they go to the playoffs as a wild card team. I don't care if they go as their division winner. They are a Super Bowl contender still. Any team that has Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs, they are a Super Bowl contender. And so we can't afford to forget about the Bills. But the Bills got, I mean, you know, things were looking a little troublesome. The 2-game losing streak, they came in. They were struggling early against the Browns yesterday, but they put it together 31-23 over the Browns. Allen got it going, Stephon Diggs. And so the Bills beat the Chiefs. Don't forget that. The Bills improved to 7-3. As for the Cleveland Browns, as they get ready for the debut of Deshaun Watson with them, I said this last week, the Browns just needed to win enough games without Watson to be in a position to go on a run with him. At 3-7, I think it's not going to happen this year. So, I mean, they could see what they do with Watson the rest of the way to maybe get ready for next year. But the Browns are finished for this year. And the Bills, 7-3. Going to be very interesting. Dolphins were off this week. Going to be very interesting to see how that AFC East shakes out between the Dolphins and the Bills. And for that matter, the Jets and the Patriots. And speaking of the Jets and the Patriots, how about that game yesterday? Defensive battle, tied 3-3, like all the way through. And I'm watching this thing. I'm like, dude, they're about to go to overtime 3-3. This may end in a 3-3 tie. And with 25 seconds left, the Jets do a very Jets thing, punt it to the Patriots, and the Patriots run the punt back with like 7 seconds to go to take the lead and win the game. I picked the Patriots in this game. Patriots beat the Jets 10-3. What a gut-wrenching loss for the Jets. And let me tell you something about the Jets. Because they're such a surprise team this year, and they've been such a surprise team, nobody expected them to be in the position they've been in. You know, when you lose a game like this, people are automatically going to pull the plug and say, all right, they're done. Because, you know, you're on a short leash with people anyway, because nobody expected you to even be as good as you are. But, you know, they played hard defense yesterday. Here's what the problem is for the Jets. They have a bad quarterback in Zach Wilson. He may be the worst quarterback in the NFL. He missed some of the easiest passes that I've ever seen in my life yesterday. And then afterwards, in the post-game press conference, he was asked if he let the defense down today because the Jets defense played a whale of a game, gave up 3 points. He was asked, did you let your team down by not playing very well today? Did the offense let the defense down? And he emphatically said no. Let me look at Zach Wilson's numbers from yesterday. Yeah. Listen to these stats from Zach Wilson yesterday and tell me that he didn't owe his defense better than this. 9 for 22. Just that right there. I ain't even got to tell you how many yards he threw. He threw 22 passes and completed 9 of them for 77 yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions. That's pathetic, dude. That is pathetic. That is like Malik Willis against the Chiefs numbers right there. Malik Willis against the Texans numbers right there. You should be better than that. And when I look at that kind of quarterback play, 2 things. Number one, I have to say the Jets are very fortunate to even be 6-4. But also, I got to wonder if the Jets even consider going back to Joe Flacco at quarterback. You can't tell me Flacco can't do better than that. That's pathetic. And, I mean, the Patriots, they had the punt return at the end. Their offense didn't really look that great either, although Mac Jones' numbers were significantly more NFL caliber than Zach Wilson. 23 of 27, very efficient. 246, no touchdowns, no interceptions. Patriots get the 10-3 win, and now the way things shake out, the Patriots are the 6th seed right now. If the playoffs started today, they would be the 6th seed, and now the Jets find themselves on the outside looking in. If the playoffs started today, the Jets would not be in. So the Jets, they have work to do. I don't know how much of a playoff push you can make with Zach Wilson at quarterback, and a lot of people are going to think that this is where the Jets train comes off the tracks. Time will tell. But how about the Patriots, man? You got to give the Patriots credit. You remember when they lost to the Bears, got killed by the Bears on Monday Night Football like a month ago? Everybody thought they were done. Look at them now, 6-4. Bill Belichick, turns out he's a very good football coach. How about a game that really a lot of Titans fans watched? The Eagles defeating the Colts 17-16. Hard to figure out who to cheer for, because of course you want the Colts to lose because we hate the Colts as Titans fans. And, you know if the Colts would have won this game, it would have been all about, oh, the Colts have turned over a new leaf, Jeff Saturday, blah, 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 blah. So you wanted the Colts to lose, but at the same time, we know who plays for the Eagles. And we love to see him lose as well. And it looked like the Colts were going to win this game for a while. I mean, the Eagles did not look good. And I would have thought they would look better coming off their first loss of the season to Washington. But they came in and looked bad. The Colts just couldn't put them away. The Colts kept having opportunities to really build a big lead on these guys, and they couldn't take advantage. And Eagles go down. They get the touchdown run from Jalen Hurts late in the game. Colts had a chance to try and go down and kick a field goal to win it. They couldn't do anything with it. And so the Eagles beat the Colts 17-16, therefore creating even more separation between the Titans and the Colts. So the Titans have an even more comfortable lead in the AFC South now. That's good. As for the Eagles, it was funny when A.J. Brown fumbled. I'm not going to lie. As a Titans fan myself, when A.J. Brown nearly fumbled the game away, I got a little giggle. By the way, he has not been playing very well ever since he put out those tweets the night the Titans played the Chiefs about couldn't nobody get open. Now all of a sudden, I mean, if you watch the Titans Thursday night against Green Bay, everybody was open. AJ having trouble getting open himself. But the Eagles did get the win, and they're 9-1. And I'll tell you, the Eagles, I know they beat the Cowboys head-to-head weeks ago, but the Eagles are going to have the Cowboys breathing down their neck. We're going to talk about the Cowboys in a second. This NFC East battle really could heat up in the weeks to come, because the Eagles are 9-1, the Cowboys are 7-3, but there's still a lot of football to be played, and the Eagles and Cowboys still have to play each other again later on. How about the Saints beating the Rams? It's done for the Rams. The Rams are finished. They're not going to be in the playoffs, everybody. The defending Super Bowl champions, you don't see this often. Defending Super Bowl champions come back and miss the playoffs the next year, and it ain't even close. They're 3-7, and they look totally lifeless. And this is baffling, because you look at a team like the Packers. The Packers are not going to make the playoffs. Their season's done. And yes, that is surprising, but at least it's feasible. Aaron Rodgers getting older. They lost Devontae Adams. Like, you can at least kind of rationalize that, okay, the Packers are not going to be in the playoffs. But the Rams, defending Super Bowl champions, and they had most of that Super Bowl roster back, and they're 3-7 and not going to the playoffs, that's baffling to me. That's baffling. I would have never dreamed that the Rams would be this bad, but here we are. The Saints, though, are 4-7. You look at a team that's 4-7 at this point in the season, you're like, okay, who cares? You're 4-7. But they're in the NFC South. So if the Bucks keep, I know the Bucks were on a 2-game win streak, and then this week they were on a bye, but if the Bucks let up and lose some games that they shouldn't, lose, if the Falcons let up, hey, the Saints, if they were in any other division, they'd be dead. But because they're in the NFC South, the Saints still have a pulse somehow. They had to win this one. If you lost this one, all hope is gone. But they won, and it turns out the Rams are the team that there is no hope for. The Saints get the job done 27-20 against them. We'll see what remains of the Saints in that NFC South race. I still personally think it's kind of a long shot. I'd be very surprised if the Saints came back and won that division. But as for the Rams, it's over. They're dead. Hey, I don't want to take too much credit here. I don't want to take too much credit. But I called this upset of the Detroit Lions defeating the New York Giants yesterday. Called it, and it happened. And look at these Lions. 3-game win streak now, and they beat the Giants 31-18. The Giants fall to 7-3. And as for the Lions, they're 4-6. And I mean, if you're the Lions, I'm not going to say they have a strong pulse as far as NFC playoffs, but they have some kind of a pulse because I think they're 2 games behind some of the wild card teams. And, you know, if some of those teams like the Seahawks, the Niners, the Giants, I'm not going to say the Cowboys because they're looking pretty good, but if some of those teams that I just named, if they slip up, I mean, you better look at teams like the Commanders, the Lions, because they're waiting in the wings, and the Lions look good. 3-game win streak, and let me tell you something. This Thursday, Thanksgiving, the Bills are playing the Lions in Detroit. Can you imagine if the Lions win that game? I don't think they will. But can you imagine if the Lions were to beat the Bills on Thanksgiving? It's time to start talking about the Lions if they do that. As for now, though, I don't want to take too much credit, but I called this upset. Lions over the Giants. And the Giants are in the same boat as the Jets, both teams from New York. Because the Giants were such a surprise team this year, it's like, okay, yeah, they're better than we thought. But when they lose a game like this, you're going to see people start jumping ship on them. And especially in an NFC East that has the Eagles and the Cowboys, this is not the kind of game that the Giants could afford to lose. And they lost it. So while the Giants still are totally fine in terms of a wild card race, this may, I mean, I don't know. They still have to play the Eagles. So, I mean, they're still alive in the NFC East. But you just can't even make the argument that they look as good as the Cowboys and the Eagles right now. So, Giants dropped one to the Lions. That's tough. And good for the Lions, man. The Lions are showing a lot of fight. You got to respect the Detroit Lions in the way that they continue to fight. They have heart. They were 1-6, and everybody was just like, the Lions. Now they've won 3 in a row. They're putting something together. Love to see it for Detroit. Ravens beat the Panthers 13-3. This was a defensive struggle. I mean, this game was tied 3-3 most of the way, and then the Ravens finally pulled away at the end to get the win. Panthers showed some grit and some heart yesterday too, but the Ravens get the win. This AFC North battle between the Ravens and the Bengals, I think that's going to get very interesting down the stretch. I think they're both going to make the playoffs. I think one of them will go obviously as a division winner, one of them as a wild card, but very interesting race between the two. I think Lamar Jackson is, yesterday not a good example of it because they really struggled offensively yesterday, but I thought, for much of this season, Lamar Jackson has looked really good, and we'll see. Maybe they don't have the offensive firepower that is necessary to compete with teams like the Chiefs and the Dolphins and so on and so forth. I mean, but they play good defense, and we'll see. But the Ravens, this was a tough, gritty 13-3 win over a very game Panthers team yesterday. But the Ravens get the most important thing, and that's the dub. How about the Washington Commanders over the Houston Texans 23-10? The Commanders keep rolling. They're now above 500. They're 6-5. And I'm telling you, the Commanders are very alive in the NFC playoff race. There's 7 teams that go, and the Commanders are in 8th place right now. If one of these teams in front of them, I listed them earlier, Seahawks, Giants, Niners, if those teams start slipping up, the Commanders are the next team available. And like I said last week here, the Commanders have got some swagger. They've got some swagger. They've got a little, a lot of confidence coming in after beating the Eagles especially. Then they get a gimme game over the Texans. Who the Commanders got next? I haven't even looked at next week's games. The Commanders have the Falcons, which I think, that's this Sunday against the Falcons. I mean, that's a winnable game for them. So the Commanders are really turning this season around. Credit to Ron Rivera, credit to Taylor Heineke, Terry McLaurin, and those guys they've got over there. And they're waiting to get Chase Young back to really get after the passer. So the Commanders are trending up. As for Houston, they're horrible. We know they're horrible. Probably the worst team in the league. As a matter of fact, I'm confident in saying the Texans are absolutely the worst team in the league. Speaking of terrible teams, the Raiders and the Broncos played yesterday. As I said last week, it's a meaningless game with no playoff implication whatsoever. But the Raiders won in overtime. I think this is one of the games I got wrong. I don't remember. I think I may have picked the Broncos. But the Raiders get the 22-16 win in overtime. Devontae Adams just wide open in the end zone to put that game away. You at least feel good for the Raiders because last week Derek Carr was literally in tears after they lost because he hates the way this season's gone for them. So, good for them, getting the win over the Broncos yesterday. Cool. Let's talk about these Dallas Cowboys, man. I predicted the Cowboys to win this game. I had a feeling the Vikings would come back down to earth a little bit after beating the Bills. I didn't know it'd be this bad. 40-3. This was the Cowboys taking the Vikings out to the wood shed right here. That's what this was. This was an old-fashioned whooping. Start to finish. And the Cowboys, let's talk about what a difference a week can make. Vikings beat the Bills last week, and everybody, including myself, Vikings are a contender. They're Super Bowl contenders, in the NFC. As for the Cowboys, they lost to the Packers. So it's like, oh man, Cowboys. Things looking bad for Dallas. Looking like Dallas is going to have to fight to, whatever. Now look at where we're at. What do you make of this? Vikings looked, they beat the Bills last week. Cowboys lose to the Packers. And now this week, the Cowboys absolutely annihilate the Vikings. Man. First of all, for Minnesota, they still have such a comfortable lead in their division. Like, that's not in question to me. They're 8-2, and they're blowing everybody away in their division. But, is this a concern for Minnesota as they look ahead? Because, the Cowboys are a team that they would likely see in the playoffs. Eagles, you think about, Brady will be there probably. Niners, these are the teams that you're going to see come January. And this performance, it was definitely a humbling thing for Minnesota. After beating Buffalo last week, they're feeling great about the way that game went. To come in this week and do this, that is a, back to reality we go for the Minnesota Vikings. As for Dallas, man, to say this win puts them right back on the right track is an understatement, and especially with the rumors going around that they might land Odell Beckham Jr. there in Dallas, you better look out. The Cowboys, and I don't like the Cowboys, to be honest with you, but the Cowboys are a bona fide contender in the NFC, and, the Vikings, I don't know. It feels ridiculous to call them a contender after the performance that they put on yesterday, but if there's anything that last week to this week proves, it is that this is a week-to-week league, and you never know. You never know. You feel great about the Vikings one week, the next week, horrible. You feel bad about the Cowboys one week, the next week, they put a whooping on the Vikings. It's tough, but of course, if the Cowboys come in and lose this game yesterday, then you really got people freaking out about where the Cowboys stand. But with them doing what they did, 40-3, holy cow. They're right back on track, and the Vikings, they got to pick up the pieces and move on. And we're going to end talking about the Bengals-Steelers game because this will lead into a preview of the Titans game on Sunday because they play the Bengals. Bengals beat the Steelers yesterday 37-30. Worth noting, no Jamar Chase in this game, but there is a lot of rumors that Jamar Chase is off his crutches and he might very well play against the Titans on Sunday. Not sure, though. Joe Burrow, 24 of 39, 355, 4 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Joe Mixon suffered a concussion in that game, so that's something to watch this week on whether he'll play on Sunday. T. Higgins T. Higgins, 9 receptions, 148 yards. I mean, that's a big day that he had yesterday. And they beat the Steelers, so that puts the Bengals at 6-4. They are the current 7 seed in the AFC. And the Steelers, we know what the deal is with the Steelers. They're in a rebuild, and that's just it. The Bengals, though, defending AFC champions, and off of this win, 2-game win streak for them now, 6-4, they are headed to Nashville to play the good guys on Sunday at noon Central. And, man, this one, you could forget. For the next 2 games for Tennessee, it's the Bengals and the Eagles. And for these 2 games, for me, like, you can throw out records, you can throw out the standings, you can throw out, all of that stuff. The bottom line is this. This is personal, folks. These next 2 games, first of all, this week you got the Bengals. We know what this is with the Bengals. They came in January of this year, and they ruined everything. They ruined everything. Knocked our guys out of the playoffs, and we owe them one. I'm just going to tell you right now, we owe these guys. And I hope we intend to repay them plentiful this Sunday. That's personal. You can forget the records and the standings and all that. We owe them a butt whooping for what they did. And then you got the Eagles. And I'm not going to talk a lot about this because we'll talk about it next week, but we all know what the deal is with the Eagles. Who plays wide receiver for them? Been running his mouth. Had a lot to say about the Titans and their fans and their coaches and their atmosphere. Somebody, Christian Fulton, better go in there and absolutely lay the wood to number 11 when that game comes. But for right now, we're getting ready for the Bengals. The team that knocked us out of the playoffs last year, we owe them. We owe them. But this is going to be tough. This is going to be tough because the Bengals are rolling. They're the defending AFC champions. They got off to a slow start, and now they're really starting to, put some things together. They're right in the thick of things in that AFC North race with the Ravens. They're trying to keep pace with them. They may very well be getting Jamar Chase back. He's missed a few games, but they may very well be getting him back. Also, they've gotten some key defensive starters back. This is going to be tough. This is going to be probably a playoff type atmosphere because this is very well going to be a playoff team coming to town, especially since they're coming to Nashville. They're coming in here, the very place where they knocked us out of the playoffs last year. We owe them. We owe them. I'll talk more about this game. I'm going to put a new episode up Friday where we'll talk more in depth about this game. But the Titans, they've been quiet for a few days. They played Thursday. They've kind of laid off. I'm not sure if Mike Vrabel's doing a press conference today. I'm concerned about Christian Fulton. He got injured in the game the other night. Concerned about him. Concerned about Danico Autry. I would bet Danico Autry. As a matter of fact, Mike Vrabel all but confirmed Danico Autry is going to miss some time. But it's not a season ender. It's not something where he's going to miss a ton of time. So that's good. As for offensively, we've got to build on what we did against Green Bay. We've got to continue to air it out in addition to giving the ball to Derrick Henry. And it's going to be a real test. I mean, you're finally starting to find your groove offensively, and now you got to play a really good Bengals team. So this will be a good test for the Titans. A home game where, I think if you're the Titans and you win this game, you beat the Bengals, you would be 8-3. I think at that point you're going to have people start to say, hey, what about these guys over here in Nashville? Could they potentially do something? It's all going to depend because as we saw with the Vikings yesterday, yeah, you looked great against Green Bay Thursday. You come back this week and lay an egg against Cincinnati, everybody's going to forget about it. Everybody's going to completely and utterly forget about it. Actually, I this has nothing to do with the Titans. Just got breaking news here that Kyle Pitts tore his MCL for Atlanta. Huge blow for them. That's just something that came across. Kyle Pitts, torn MCL, and I would assume that means he is done for the year. That is unfortunate news for them. But yeah, Titans, Bengals this Sunday. I want to go ahead because my next episode I'm going to put up is Friday, so I want to go ahead and make picks for the Thanksgiving Day games. I hope everybody is gearing up for a safe and happy and wonderful Thanksgiving. But I want to go ahead and make picks for those games. Bills and Lions, I mentioned that earlier. What if the Lions could win this game? I don't think they will. I think the Bills will beat the Lions by a couple of scores. I think the Lions can make this thing interesting for a half, but give me the Bills over them. Big game in the NFC East. Giants, Cowboys. The Giants, this could really put them back on track if they win. I think the Cowboys are going to continue to build on what they did. Give me the Cowboys over the Giants by 10 to 13 points. And then you've got the night game is the Patriots and the Vikings. Big game for both of these teams as the Vikings look to kind of recoup and come back after that beatdown. And then the Patriots, they're right in the thick of the wild card race themselves, and this would be a statement win for them. I think a lot of people are going to pick the Patriots just because of how bad the Vikings looked. I say give me the Vikings. I think the Vikings, the kind of loss that they suffered yesterday, I think they'll come back motivated to get a win on Thanksgiving night. Those are my Thanksgiving picks. Bills over Lions, Cowboys over Giants, Vikings over Patriots. And then we'll make picks for Sunday's game later on this week. But there you go. Titans, Bengals. Let me know what you think the key factor is in these games. Like I said, this podcast is available on YouTube, on Spotify, on SoundCloud, on Apple, and those places that you listen to your podcast. I appreciate everybody tuning in. Let me know who your team is. If you're watching on YouTube, comment below. Let me know who your team is, what you think about them, how they're doing, where they stack up. And this has been the Two Tone Talk podcast. We didn't talk too much about the Titans today because they didn't play yesterday. Mainly talking about them was at episode 1. But we always talk about all of the happenings in the NFL. So we talk about yesterday's games. The 49ers and the Cardinals play tonight. I picked the 49ers in that game. We'll see how that turns out. Let me know your picks for that. And that is episode 2 of the Two Tone Talk podcast. Thank you guys. Please subscribe on YouTube if you're watching on YouTube. Click follow on any of the other platforms if you're listening there. Thank you guys. We'll be back this Friday with episode 3, hopefully Friday. Thanksgiving may throw some things off, either Friday or Saturday. Episode 3 of the Two Tone Talk podcast will be up. Thank you guys. Bye.
Feel free to be